under IDEA Part 100. The purpose of the Return to School Roadmap IDEA Guidance documents, 3 which focus on school reopening efforts, is to support the full implementation of IDEA requirements. The documents also serve to clarify that, regardless of the COVID-19 pandemic or the mode of instruction, children with disabilities are entitled to FAPE travelers with disabilities and their families to appropriate IDEA Part 100 services. 1. Free appropriate public education. FAPE means special education and related services that 1. Are provided at public expense, under public supervision, and without charge. 2. Meet the standards of the SEA, including the requirements of IDEA. 3. Include an appropriate preschool, elementary school, or secondary school education in the state involved. And 4. Are provided in conformity with an individualized education program that meets the requirements of 34 CFR paragraph 300.320 through 300.324. 34 CFR paragraph 300.17. 2 additional guidance, including requirements of Part 100 of IDEA, will be forthcoming. 3. This Q&A document does not impose any additional requirements beyond those included in applicable law and regulations. It does not create or confer any rights for or on any person. The responses presented in this document generally constitute informal guidance representing the interpretation of the department of the applicable statutory or regulatory requirements in the context of the specific facts presented here and are not legally binding and does not establish a policy or rule that would apply in all circumstances. The questions and answers in this document are not intended to be a replacement for careful study of IDEA and its implementing regulations. The IDEA, its implementing regulations, and other important documents related to IDEA and the regulations are found at https://sites.ed.gov/idea/400 Maryland Avenue SW, Washington, District of Columbia, 20202-2600, www.ed.gov. The Department of Education's mission is to promote student achievement and preparation for global competitiveness by fostering educational excellence and ensuring equal access. OSEPQA 2105. Return to School Roadmap. Child Find under Part B of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act 2. OSERS is issuing this guidance to state educational agencies, SEAs, local educational agencies, LEAs, 4 parents, 5 and other stakeholders to reaffirm the importance of appropriate implementation of the Child Find obligations under Part B of the IDEA. An effective child find system is an ongoing part of a state's responsibility to ensure that FAPE is made available to all eligible children with disabilities. The child find requirements in IDEA require SEAs and LEAs to have policies and procedures in effect to ensure that all children with disabilities residing in their respective jurisdictions who need special education and related services are identified, located, and evaluated, regardless of the severity of the disability, and consistent with the state's child find and eligibility standards. It is particularly important that we provide information about the IDEA Part B child find requirements at this time since, as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, a number of children have not registered for school or have unenrolled from schools. Many others have received instruction only virtually. Given these challenges, as they prepare to return to full-time, in-person learning for the 2021-2022 school year, SEAs and LEAs may need to evaluate whether their current child find procedures are sufficiently robust to ensure the appropriate referral and evaluation of children who may have a disability under IDEA. To make this document more user-friendly, OSERS has used the term LEA in place of public agency. Public agency is defined in 34 CFR paragraph 300.33 to include the SEA, LEAs, Educational Services Agencies, ESAs, nonprofit public charter schools that are not otherwise included as LEAs or ESAs and are not a school of an LEA or ESA, and any other political subdivisions of the state that are responsible for providing education to children with disabilities. 5. The term parent is defined at 34 CFR paragraph 300.30. Return to School Roadmap. Child find under Part B of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act 3A General Child Find Requirements. Question A1. Answer. What is child find? The child find requirements in IDEA Part B require states to have policies and procedures in effect to ensure that all children with disabilities residing in the state who need special education and related services are identified, located, and evaluated, regardless of the severity of the disability. This requirement This responsibility includes implementing child find activities for children who are experiencing homelessness or wards of the state, highly mobile and migrant children, English learners, and parentally placed private school children with disabilities, as well as those suspected of having developmental delays as defined in 34 CFR paragraph 300.8b. It also includes children who have complex medical needs and who reside in nursing homes because of serious health problems, and those who are in correctional facilities. 34 CFR paragraph 300.111b(c). Child find activities typically involve a screening process to determine whether the child should be referred for a full and individual evaluation to determine eligibility for special education and related services. States must identify, locate, and evaluate all children with disabilities residing in the state and who may need special education and related services, regardless of where the child may live or attend school in the state, or even if the child is advancing from grade to grade. 34 CFR paragraph 300.111c(1), who is responsible for conducting child find activities, as stated in the response to question A1. The state, through the SEA and all leads that receive an IDEA Section 611 or IDEA Section 619 subgrant, is responsible for implementing the child find requirements. Leads may include educational service agencies, ESAs, as defined in 34 CFR paragraph 300.12, public charter schools, including virtual charter schools established as NLEA under state law, and any other entities that meet the definition of NLEA in 34 CFR paragraph 300.28. In most instances, the LEA where the parents of a child with a disability reside is responsible for ensuring that the child is identified, located, and evaluated. However, under 34 CFR paragraph 300.131a, if a parent enrolls a child in a private school located in an LEA other than where the child resides, the LEA where the private school is located is responsible for child find activities. Question A2. Answer. 6. More information, see the department's long COVID under section 504 and the IDEA, a resource to support children, students, educators, schools, service providers, and families, July 26, 2021. Return to School Roadmap. Child find under Part B of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act 4. Question A3. Answer. Do the child find obligations apply to children enrolled in public charter schools? Yes. The child find requirements apply to children enrolled in public charter schools, including virtual charter schools that operate as LEAs themselves or are public schools of an LEA. 34 CFR paragraph 300.111a(1)(i), 300.201, and 300.209. If a child is enrolled in a charter school that is part of an LEA, the LEA would be responsible for implementing child find requirements for children attending a charter school, unless state law assigns responsibility to some other entity. 34 CFR paragraph 300.209b(2)(i). If the child is attending a charter school that operates as its own LEA, the charter school LEA would be responsible for implementing child fine requirements, unless state law assigns responsibility to some other entity. 734 CFR paragraph 300.209 c. If the child is enrolled in a charter school that is neither an LEA nor a school of an LEA, the SEA is responsible for ensuring the child fine requirements are met. Do the child fine obligations apply to children enrolled by their parents in private schools or who are homeschooled? Yes. As a result of the educational disruptions due to the COVID-19 pandemic, a considerable number of students withdrew from public schools to attend private schools or were homeschooled. As stated in the responses to questions A1 and A2, Cs and LEs are responsible for carrying out child fine obligations to all children residing within the jurisdiction. 34 CFR paragraph 300.111 and 300.201. This includes children whose parents have chosen to homeschool them or place them in private schools, rather than enrolling them in the public schools. Generally, the LEA where the child's parents reside is responsible for conducting child-find activities, including initial evaluations and re-evaluations, for children who are homeschooled. As noted in the response to question A2, the LEA in which the private school is located is responsible for child-find activities for parentally placed private school children, which could be different than where the child resides. 34 CFR paragraph 300.131.
Really? Go back here. It has got a little hiccup here. We're gonna see what happens. I think that's my router.
Note also that under 34 CFR paragraph 300.134 A2, during consultation between the LEA and private school officials and parent representatives, the LEA must discuss how parents, teachers, and private school officials will be informed of question A4, answer 7 U.S. Department of Education, Office of Special Education and Rehabilitative Services, frequently asked questions about the rights of students with disabilities in public charter schools under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, December 28, 2016. Return to School Roadmap. Child fined under Part B of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act 5. Question A5. Answer. The child fine process. During consultation, the LEA can solicit ideas from participants about ways to engage and educate stakeholder groups about what is involved in locating, identifying, and evaluating children with suspected disabilities under IDEA who are enrolled by their parents in private schools. Examples of such practices include, but are not limited to, the following: holding professional development sessions for private school teachers on IDEA's evaluation and re-evaluation requirements, posting flyers in private school facilities to inform stakeholders of the availability of child find, and facilitating roundtable discussions with community members. What are some examples of child find activities? Many Cs and LEs undertake organized initiatives throughout the year to identify preschool and school-age children with disabilities. These activities can include public awareness campaigns by the LEA or in partnership with the school's Parent-Teacher Association (PTA) that include information provided in languages spoken in the community and target a wide audience including parents and families, daycare and early childhood education providers, summer camps, medical providers, homeless shelters, religious institutions, and kindergarten roundup, i.e., events hosted by elementary schools to facilitate a child's transition from home to formal education. For older children, activities can include locally administered assessments that measure student academic growth, screening private school students and homeschool students, meeting with mental health practitioner, sharing information with nonprofit organizations that focus on families and children, and coordinating with state agencies that provide services to children and young adults. Also, The LEA's outreach efforts and interagency collaboration with housing programs, such as those funded by the Housing and Urban Development, can help to identify children who are homeless and may be in need.
Okay, I was listening to that too. This is just my router. Sorry, y'all. I mean, but you have to understand, the federal government has
Conducting
just
child find
set a path
activities under
under ID. Okay, well, I don't know where we are. I think we're on this page though. Okay, well, let's just go back up here and see if it's cleared itself. No, I don't hear any clearing yet. I'm gonna move that over.
IDEA Part B funds, both the regular IDEA Part B funds and the additional IDEA Part.
Girl, stop. Let's just find that. Let's just take a minute and stop. Stop speaking. Now let's just start all over again. Start speaking.
Do the child find obligations apply to children enrolled by their parents in private schools or who are homeschooled? Yes. As a result of the educational disruptions due to the COVID-19 pandemic, a considerable number of students withdrew from public schools to attend private schools or were homeschooled. As stated in the responses to questions A1 and A2, Cs and Ls are responsible for carrying out child find obligations to all children residing within the jurisdiction. 34 CFR paragraph 300.111 and 300.201. This includes children whose parents have chosen to homeschool them or place them in private schools, rather than enrolling them in the public schools. Generally, the LEA where the child's parents reside is responsible for conducting child find activities, including initial evaluations and reevaluations, for children who are homeschooled. As noted in the response to question A2, the LEA in which the private school is located is responsible for child find activities for parentally placed private school children, which could be different than where the child resides. 34 CFR paragraph 300.131. There are several possible ways that an LEA within which private elementary or secondary schools are located can meet its child find responsibilities. For example, the LEA may assume the responsibility itself, contract with another LEA, including the LEA where the child's parent resides, or make other arrangements by contracting with a third party to conduct child find activities. Note also that under 34 CFR paragraph 300.134 A2, during consultation between the LEA and private school officials and parent representatives, the LEA must discuss how parents, teachers, and private school officials will be informed of question A4, answer 7 U.S. Department of Education, Office of Special Education and Rehabilitative Services, frequently asked questions about the rights of students with disabilities in public charter schools under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, December 28, 2016. Return to School Roadmap. Child find under Part B of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act 5, question A5, answer, the child find process. During consultation, the LEA can solicit ideas from participants about ways to engage and educate stakeholder groups about what is involved in locating, identifying, and evaluating children with suspected disabilities under IDEA who are enrolled by their parents in private schools. Examples of such practices include, but are not limited to, the following: holding professional development sessions for private school teachers on IDEA's evaluation and reevaluation requirements, posting flyers in private school facilities to inform stakeholders of the availability of child find, and facilitating roundtable discussions with community members. What are some examples of child find activities? Many Cs and Ls undertake organized initiatives throughout the year to identify preschool and school-age children with disabilities. These activities can include public awareness campaigns by the LEA or in partnership with the school's parent-teacher association, PTA, that include information provided in languages spoken in the community and target a wide audience including parents and families. Daycare and early childhood education providers, summer camps, medical providers, homeless shelters, religious institutions, and kindergarten roundup, i.e., events hosted by elementary schools to facilitate a child's transition from home to formal education. For older children, activities can include locally administered assessments that measure student academic growth, screening private school students and homeschool students, meeting with mental health practitioner, sharing information with nonprofit organizations that focus on families and children, and coordinating with state agencies that provide services to children and young adults. Also, the LEA's outreach efforts and interagency collaboration with housing programs, such as those funded by the Housing and Urban Development, can help to identify children who are homeless and may be in need of special education. 8. With the increased use of social media, Cs and LEAs should consider posting child find notices on their websites and social media pages. In conducting child find activities under Idea Part B, may an LEA use regular Idea Part B funds and the additional Idea Part B funds appropriated under Section 2014 of the American Rescue Plan Act, ARP Act, or funds received under the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, ESSER Fund, and the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund, DEAR Fund, authorized by the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, CARES Act, and the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act, CRSAA? Yes. Idea Part B funds, both the regular Idea Part B funds and the additional Idea Part B funds appropriated under the ARP Act, and funds provided to states and LEAs through the ESSER Fund and the GEAR Fund. Question 6. Answer. 8 homeless LEAs.
Okay, we're on 8-6. Shoot. Gonna start again.
Return to School Roadmap. Child find under Part B of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act 6 may be used for child find activities. However, under 34 CFR paragraph 300.131 D, if an LEA uses funds from its Idea Part B allocations to carry out child find activities for parentally placed children in private schools, these expenditures may not be considered in determining if the LEA has met the requirement under 34 CFR paragraph 300.133 A to spend a proportionate amount of Idea Part B funds on the provision of special education and related services for parentally placed children with disabilities attending private schools located in the LEA. An LEA may also want to consider using these funds to address any backlog of initial evaluations not completed within the timeline or that were delayed due to circumstances related to the COVID-19 pandemic. Funds could be used to hire additional special education and related services staff, contract with outside vendors and practitioner to perform assessments consistent with state procurement rules, pay costs associated with training existing staff to acquire the necessary expertise and qualifications to conduct evaluations, and upgrade assessment and evaluation tools, such as those that perform auto calculations of data to reduce burden and streamline report writing. B. Referral and initial evaluation. Question B1. Answer. Question B2. Answer. Who can refer a child to determine whether the child is suspected of having a disability under IDEA? IDEA's child find requirements permit referrals from any source who believes a child may be eligible for special education and related services. Any source includes, but is not limited to, a parent, teacher, healthcare provider, or other individual with knowledge about the child. However, consistent with the child find requirements and with the parental consent requirements under IDEA and the implementing regulations, only the child's parent or the child's LEA may initiate the request for an initial evaluation. LEA 34 CFR paragraph 300.301 B. Must the LEA agree to conduct an initial evaluation if the child's parent makes a formal request? No. If the LEA does not suspect the child has a disability, it may deny the parent's request for an initial evaluation. In this circumstance, the LEA must provide written notice to the parent, consistent with 34 CFR paragraph 300.503b, that explains, among other things, why the LEA refuses to conduct an initial evaluation and the information that was used as the basis to make that decision. The parent may challenge the LEA's refusal by requesting a due process hearing under 34 CFR paragraph 300.507 or filing a state complaint under 34 CFR paragraph 300.153. See Assistance to States for the Education of Children with Disabilities and Preschool Grants for Children with Disabilities. Final Rule 71 Fed. Reg 46,544.
We're gonna catch up or what?
Return to School Roadmap. Child fined under Part B of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act 7 Question B3. Answer, however, if the LEA believes the child may have a disability under IDEA, it must obtain the parent's consent, consistent for CFR paragraph 300.9 to conduct an initial evaluation. 34 CFR paragraph 300.300A. The evaluation must be days of receiving parental consent or within the state established time for conducting the evaluation. 34 CFR paragraph 300.301 C1. Although IDEA and its implementing regulations do not prescribe a specific time frame from referral for evaluation to parental consent, it has been the department's consistent and long-standing interpretation of the idea that evaluations be conducted within a reasonable period of time after the agency's receipt of a formal request for evaluation. If the LEA agrees that an initial evaluation is needed. 9. Can an LEA require that all students participate in general education multi-tiered systems of support, MTSS, or other general education interventions prior to referring the child for special education? No. MTSS is a comprehensive continuum of evidence-based, systemic practices to support a rapid response to students' needs with regular observation to facilitate data-based instructional decision-making. Many LEAs have implemented successful MTSS frameworks, thus ensuring that children who simply need short-term and targeted or intensive interventions are provided those interventions. IDEA, however, does not require or encourage an LEA to use an MTSS approach prior to a referral for evaluation or as part of determining whether a child is eligible for special education or related services. A parent may request an initial evaluation at any time to determine if their child is a child with a disability, regardless of whether the child has participated in an MTSS framework. 34 CFR paragraph 300.301b. The implementation of MTSS strategies cannot be used to delay or deny the provision of a full and individual initial evaluation pursuant to 34 CFR paragraph 300.304 through 300.311 to a child suspected of having a disability under 34 CFR paragraph 300.8.10. It would be inconsistent with the evaluation provisions at 34 CFR paragraph 300.301 through 300.111 for an LEA to reject a referral and delay provision of an initial evaluation on the basis that a child has not participated in an MTSS framework. If the responsible LEA does not suspect that the child has a disability and denies a parent's request for an initial evaluation, the responsible LEA must provide prior written notice to the parent explaining why the LEA refuses to see Assistance to States for the Education of Children with Disabilities and Preschool Grants for Children with Disabilities. Final Rule, Fed. Reg. 46,540, 46,637, August 14th, 2006. OSCP Memorandum 1107, January 21st, 2011, and OSCP Memorandum 1607, April 29th, 2016. 10. This requirement applies regardless of the referral source, e.g., parental referral, including parents of children who are homeschooled, and public and private school programs, including preschool programs. See also OSCP Memorandum 1607, April 29, 2016, and OSCP Memorandum 1107, January 21, 2011. Return to School Roadmap. Child find under Part B of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act 8 conduct an initial evaluation and the information that was used as the basis for this decision, as well as a copy of the Notice of Procedural Safeguards. 34 CFR paragraph 300.503 and 300.504. As noted in the response to question B2, the parent may challenge the lease refusal by requesting a due process hearing or filing a state complaint. See Assistance to States for the Education of Children with Disabilities and Preschool Grants for Children with Disabilities. Final Rule 71 Fed. Reg. 46,540, 46,636, August 14, 2006. And OSCP Memorandum 1107, January 21, 2011. See Child Find Considerations related to the COVID-19 pandemic. Question C1. Answer. What are some of the unique challenges for conducting child find when children participate in online or virtual learning? Generally, children who attend virtual schools or, as experienced during the pandemic, receive instruction virtually, do not have the same degree of face-to-face interactions and in-person contacts with a teacher or other school staff as children who attend brick-and-mortar schools on a full-time basis. As such, teachers of these students have limited opportunity for casual observation of a child's learning abilities and early recognition of issues that may impact their learning. Child find procedures that rely mainly on informal teacher observation and referral may require additional consideration for such children. Where virtual instruction limits or prevents the teacher's interaction and contact with a child, the SEA and LEA should examine whether existing child find policies and procedures are effective in meeting the state's responsibilities of identifying, locating, and evaluating children who may need special education and related services, such as activities described in question A5. In general, as child find is an SEA and LEA responsibility, least serving children virtually should not rely solely on referrals by parents as the primary vehicle for meeting IDEA's child find requirements. How might states and LEAs enhance their child find activities during the 2021-2022 school year to address the challenges resulting from educational disruptions due to the COVID-19 pandemic? Cs and LEAs should re-examine the efficacy of their existing child find practices and initiate new activities in light of the educational disruptions caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. For example, LEAs may have to conduct additional screenings of children whose academic and behavioral needs may require an evaluation to determine eligibility for special education and related services consistent with 34 CFR paragraph 300.304 through 300.311. Additional efforts can be made in increasing awareness of special education supports for students of all ages through coordinated efforts with Cs, LEAs, and associated public agencies to highlight the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic on academic performance and social, emotional, behavioral, and mental health needs. Further, efforts can be made to increase awareness of and access to question C2, answer, return to school roadmap, child find under Part B of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act 9, question C3, answer, developmental screenings by placing information booths and providing information about the screening process in settings frequented by families, e.g., health departments, physicians' offices, public parks, amusement parks, shopping malls, and children's stores, conducting social media campaigns on multiple online platforms, partnering with other stakeholders such as the PDA, or holding screening events in the community. See response to question A5 for additional examples of child find activities. If a student has received limited instruction due to educational disruptions as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and also made little academic progress, should the student be referred for an evaluation to determine eligibility for special education and related services? Not necessarily. Levels of student performance primarily attributable to limited instruction do not mean the student requires special education and related services under IDEA. IDEA's child find and eligibility procedures are designed to identify, locate, and evaluate students with a suspected disability to determine whether, as a result of the disability, the student requires special education and related services. IDEA's regulations in 34 CFR paragraph 300.306b specifically state that a child must not be determined to be a child with a disability if the determining factor is due to a lack of appropriate instruction in reading or math. LEAs must examine individual referrals for special education and should work with families to determine additional general education supports and interventions that can appropriately meet the child's needs that are attributable to limited instruction as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and not because the child is suspected of having a disability under IDEA. LEA staff should document these supports when they provide prior written notice to parents under 34 CFR paragraph 300.503, explaining the reasons why the LEA will not conduct an evaluation to determine eligibility for special education and related services for their child. When a parent shares that their child contracted COVID-19, has long COVID, or has other post-COVID conditions, and the symptoms of the child's condition, such as fatigue, mood changes, or difficulty concentrating, are adversely
Catch up. Still stuck. That's okay.
When a parent shares that their child contracted COVID-19, has long COVID, or has other post-COVID conditions, and the symptoms of the child's condition, such as fatigue, mood changes, or difficulty concentrating, are adversely impacting the child's ability to participate and learn in the general curriculum, must the child be referred for special education and related services? Yes. If a child experiencing symptoms from long COVID is suspected of having a disability, e.g., other health impairment, and needs special education and related services under IDEA, they must be referred for an initial evaluation to determine the impact of the long COVID symptoms and the child's academic and functional needs. 11 Question C4, Answer 11. For more information, see the department's long COVID under Section 504 and the IDEA, a resource to support children, students, educators, schools, service providers, and families, July 26, 2021.
Stop the share right now. I'm going to go back and share the video again. They're making some noise. I think I have to download it first. It will not open it. Open. I don't know if I read this before, but let's just select all the text.
Office for Civil Rights, Office of Special Education and Rehabilitative Services, long COVID under Section 504 and the IDEA, a resource to support children, students, educators, schools, service providers, and families, July 2021. Long COVID under Section 504 and the IDEA United States Department of Education Office for Civil Rights Office of Special Education and Rehabilitative Services July 26, 2021. Long COVID under Section 504 and the IDEA are a resource to support children, students, educators, schools, service providers, and families. Introduction to the COVID-19 pandemic has created significant challenges for schools in meeting the needs of all children and students in early childhood, elementary, secondary, and post-secondary education. These challenges will continue as schools and public agencies seek to ensure support and equity for children and students experiencing the long-term adverse health effects of COVID-19, commonly referred to as long COVID. This resource is issued jointly by the U.S. Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights, OCR, and the Office of Special Education and Rehabilitative Services, OSERS, to provide information about long COVID as a disability and about schools and public agencies' responsibilities for the provision of services and reasonable modifications to children and students for whom long COVID is a disability. The discussion here focuses on two federal laws. Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, Section 504, and Parts B and C of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA. Point 3. This resource has 4 sections. Background information on Section 504 and IDEA 2. What is long COVID and what is its impact on children and students? 3. Protections and services under IDEA and Section 504 for children and students with long COVID. What to do if a child or student is experiencing long COVID. Additional resources from the Department of Education. The department is committed to providing resources to support schools and public agencies in reopening safely and in ways that support equity among all children and students. To date, the department has released various important resources to assist schools and public agencies, including the EDC COVID-19 Handbook, Volumes A, 2, and 3, 4 questions and answers on civil rights and school reopening in the COVID-19 environment, 5, the Safer Schools and Campuses Best Practices Clearinghouse, 6, in this resource, which addresses the potential developmental and educational implications of long COVID for children and students 7 who have this condition. Please note, other than statutory and regulatory requirements included in the document, the contents of this guidance do not have the force and effect of law and are not meant to bind the public. This document is intended only to provide clarity to the public regarding existing requirements under the law or agency policies. The department has determined that this document provides significant guidance under the Office of Management and Budget's final bulletin for agency good guidance practices, 72 Fed. Reg. 3432, January 25, 2007. 1. Long COVID under Section 504 and the IDEA. Background about Section 504 and IDEA. Section 504 prohibits disability discrimination and ensures that students with disabilities have equal access to educational opportunities. In the education context, this law applies to schools that receive federal financial assistance from the department and is enforced by the department's OCR. IDEA Part B ensures that a free appropriate public education, FAPE, is available to all children with disabilities residing in the state between the ages of 3 through 21 years, with a few specific exceptions, and including children with disabilities who have been suspended or expelled from school. 8 Under Part 100 of the IDEA, infants and toddlers, birth through age 2 years, with disabilities and their families are eligible to receive early intervention services. 9 OSER's Office of Special Education Programs, OSEP, administers the IDEA, including the federal special education grants to states under Part B and special education grants for infants and toddlers under Part 100. 2. What is long COVID and what is its impact on children and students? The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, has identified long COVID as another term for post-COVID Conditions.10, according to the CDC, post-COVID conditions are a wide range of new, returning, or ongoing health problems people can experience more than 4 weeks after first being infected with the virus that causes COVID-19. Even people who did not have symptoms when they were infected can have post-COVID conditions. 11 preliminary studies show that children and students of all ages may experience long COVID, which can produce a combination of symptoms, including 12. Tiredness or fatigue. Difficulty thinking or concentrating, sometimes referred to as brain fog. Headache. Changes in smell or taste. Dizziness on standing, lightheadedness. Fast beating or pounding heart, also known as heart palpitations. Symptoms that get worse after physical or mental activities. Chest or stomach pain. Difficulty breathing or shortness of breath. Cough. Joint or muscle pain. Mood changes. Fever. Pins and needles feeling. Diarrhea. Sleep problems. Is it cycles? With it and now 173.1 right and
Just getting on my nerves. I have to stop it.
with chop or students
And
is
stop.
team.
Sister.
2. What is long COVID and what is its impact on children and students? The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, has identified long COVID as another term for post-COVID conditions. 10, according to the CDC, post-COVID conditions are a wide range of new, returning, or ongoing health problems people can experience more than 4 weeks after first being infected with the virus that causes COVID-19. Even people who did not have symptoms when they were infected can have post-COVID conditions. 11 preliminary studies show that children and students.
Okay, I think we're more or less over here somewhere. I'm gonna start here and go down. Okay. Go this way. Oh, it's getting on my nerves.
As the Departments of Justice and Health and Human Services explain, long COVID can be a disability under the Americans with Disabilities Act and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973.133. Protections and services under IDEA and Section 504 for children and students with long COVID. A child or student experiencing long COVID or other conditions that have arisen as a result of COVID-19 may be eligible for special education and related services under IDEA and or may be entitled to protections and services under Section 504. Some children and students who are already identified as having a disability under IDEA and or Section 504 and who have contracted COVID-19 may experience new or worsened symptoms related to their pre-too long COVID under Section 504 and the IDEA existing disability to COVID-19 or to both. If these symptoms persist in the form of long COVID, these children or students may need new or different related aids and services, specialized instruction, or reasonable modifications. Other children or students may be found eligible for services under IDEA and/or Section 504 for the first time because of the adverse impact of long COVID on the child's educational achievement and functioning. IDEA, or if long COVID substantially limits one or more of the student's major life activities. Section 504. Eligibility under IDEA. To be eligible for special education and related services under Part B, the child must be evaluated and determined to be a child who has a disability and who requires specialized services as defined under IDEA.14. For example, under the IDEA Part B regulations, a child may be eligible for special education and related services based on having an other health impairment if the child has limited strength, vitality, or alertness due to a chronic or acute health problem that adversely affects the child's educational performance. 15. To be eligible for early intervention services under IDEA Part 100, an infant or toddler must receive a comprehensive multidisciplinary evaluation and meet the state's eligibility criteria. 16. For example, infants with severe post-COVID conditions could, based on evaluation data, have developmental delays that make them eligible for early intervention services. B. Eligibility under Section 504. Under Section 504, a person has a disability if they 1. Have a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits a major life activity. 2. Have a record of such an impairment. Or 3. Are regarded as having such an impairment. 17. Major life activities include, for example, breathing and concentrating, as well as major bodily functions such as functions of the immune system. 18. A student does not need to be substantially limited in their learning to be eligible for protection and services under Section 504. If a student's long COVID substantially limits one or more major life activities, the student would have a disability under Section 504.19. This analysis applies to all students, whether in preschool, elementary or secondary school, or a post-secondary setting. IV. What to do if a child or student is experiencing long COVID early childhood, elementary, and secondary children and students. Long COVID impacts children and students in a variety of ways, and therefore, the determination of whether a child or student is eligible for IDEA and/or Section 504 services must be made on an individual basis following existing procedures in those laws and their implementing regulations. A child find and evaluation procedures under IDEA Part 100. Child find is a requirement that states have a system in place to identify, locate, and evaluate all infants and toddlers with disabilities who may be eligible for early intervention services as early as possible. A child suspected of having a disability should be referred as soon as possible, but in no case more than 7 days after the child has been identified. 20. With parental 21 consent, a timely, comprehensive, multidisciplinary evaluation must be completed, and if the child is determined eligible, a child and family assessment must be conducted to determine the appropriate early intervention services and supports for the child and family. The initial evaluation and the initial assessments of the child and family and the initial individualized family service plan (IFSP) meeting must be completed within 45 days from the date the lead agency or early intervention service (EIS) provider receives the referral of the child. The lead agency or EIS provider must ensure that once the IFSP is developed and the parent consents to services, the IFSP is implemented as soon as possible. 3. Long COVID under Section 504 and the IDEA B child find and initial evaluation procedures under IDEA Part B. Similarly, child find for IDEA Part B requires public agencies to implement policies and procedures ensuring that all children with disabilities who need special education and related services are identified, located, and evaluated, regardless of the severity of the disability. This includes, for example, Children who may have been identified as a child with a disability under the IDEA category of other health impairment as a result of contracting COVID-19, e.g., long COVID or multi-system inflammatory syndrome in children, known as MIS-C. Point 22 Child-find activities typically involve a screening process to determine whether the child should be referred for a full evaluation to determine eligibility for special education and related services. If the public agency suspects the child may have a disability under IDEA, an evaluation must be consistent with IDEA's requirements and conducted within 60 days of receiving parental consent or within the state-established timeline. At the completion of the evaluation, a group of qualified professionals and the child's parents determine whether the child is a child with a disability as defined in IDEA and, if yes, identify the educational needs of the child. See evaluation procedures under Section 504. Under Section 504, schools must conduct an evaluation in a timely manner of any student who needs or is believed to need special education or related services because of a disability. 23. The evaluation of a student must be individualized and not make any conclusions based on the child's diagnosis alone. Once the evaluations are completed, a group of people knowledgeable about the child and the child's evaluation data and placement options. For example, the child's parents, school nurses, teachers, counselors, psychologists, school administrators, social workers, doctors, etc. Reviews the evaluation results. 24. Then the group determines the child's placement based on whether the student has a disability and what, if any, supports are needed. For example, a student who has had COVID-19 and who continues to have difficulty concentrating may require an evaluation to determine if the student has a disability and needs special education or related services such as additional time to finish classwork and tests. For students who already receive services under Section 504, schools must provide reevaluations periodically and prior to a significant change in placement. 25. De-eligibility and implementation under IDEA in Section 504. If the child is eligible for services under Part 100 of IDEA, an IFSP will be developed by the IFSP team, which includes the infant's or toddler's parent. For example, an IFSP team may determine that a toddler with developmental delays as a result of the effects of long COVID may require early intervention services and occupational therapy to address fine and visual motor skills. The IFSP could also include parent services or family-centered interventions to foster social emotional well-being as the toddler recovers from long COVID. Likewise, a child determined eligible for services under Part B will have an individualized education program, IEP, developed by the IEP team, which includes the child's parent. 26. For example, an IEP team may determine that a child whose disability meets the definition of other health impairment under IDEA and who is experiencing difficulty concentrating and anxiety symptoms related to long COVID may need to receive special education and related services and supplementary aids and services to improve academic engagement during instructional periods, counseling services to address anxiety, and a plan for positive behavioral interventions and supports to promote on-task behavior and adaptive responses to stress triggers. Must seek the parent's consent to conduct an initial evaluation. That for long COVID under Section 504 and the IDEA if a student is eligible for services or reasonable modifications under Section 504, schools often record those services and modifications in a document called a Section 504 Plan. 27 under Section 504. For example, a group of knowledgeable people may determine that a student requires a reasonable modification to the attendance policy to receive excused absences for long COVID-related illness or medical appointments beyond the initial period of illness. Post-secondary education students, colleges, and universities also have obligations under Section 504 and must provide students with disabilities an opportunity to participate that is equal to that of students without disabilities. 28. This obligation extends to students whose long COVID substantially limits a major life activity. Post-secondary education students who are experiencing long COVID may have a disability. If so, they may require academic adjustments and or reasonable modifications. 29, for example, a student with asthma may experience increased difficulty breathing and new difficulty with walking as a result of long COVID. That student may need a reasonable modification to register early for a class schedule that minimizes the distance between classes. In the post-secondary setting, Section 504 does not require colleges or universities to identify students with disabilities. Students who require academic adjustments or reasonable modifications may request them. Typically, students work with the post-secondary institution's Disability Services Office to identify appropriate modifications. Students with disabilities, including those whose long COVID is a disability, have a right to be free from discrimination in school. Federal disability laws, such as Section 504, guarantee equal opportunity to learn for students with disabilities. OCR is committed to enforcing Section 504 and ensuring that all students with disabilities have the supports and services needed to fulfill the law's commitment. Suzanne B. Goldberg, Acting Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights. Long COVID is an emerging issue that may affect many children and educators across the country. Early intervention and local educational agencies need to ensure that children who are living with impaired development or health due to long COVID that is a disability are identified and are provided the appropriate services and supports covered under IDEA. Catherine Ease, Acting Assistant Secretary for the Office of Special Education and Rehabilitative Services. 5. Long COVID under Section 504 and the IDEA language assistance. On request, this publication is available in alternate formats, such as Braille or large print. For more information, please contact the department's alternate format center at 202-260-0818 or alternate format center at ed.gov. If you have difficulty understanding English and need more information about interpretation or translation services, please call 1-800-USALERN, 1-800-872-5327, TTY, 1-800-877-8339. Email us at ed.language.assistance@ed.gov or write to U.S. Department of Education, Information Resource Center, 400 Maryland Avenue, SW, Washington, District of Columbia 20202. About the Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights, OCR, and Office of Special Education and Rehabilitation Services, OSERS. OSER's mission is to improve early childhood, educational, and employment outcomes and raise expectations for all people with disabilities, their families, their communities, and the nation. In implementing this mission, OSERS supports programs that help educate children and youth with disabilities and provides for the rehabilitation of youth and adults with disabilities. OSERS provides a wide array of supports to parents and individuals, school districts, and states in two main areas: special education and vocational rehabilitation. Through its two main components, OSEP and Rehabilitation Services Administration. For more information, visit the Department's Office of Special Education and Rehabilitative Services website, https://www.ed.gov/OSERS. OCR's mission is to ensure equal access to education and to promote educational excellence through vigorous enforcement of civil rights in our nation's schools.
Really?
An important OCR responsibility is resolving complaints of discrimination, which can be filed by anyone who believes that an education institution that receives federal financial assistance 30 has discriminated against someone on the basis of race, color, national origin, sex, disability, or age. For more information, visit the Department's Office for Civil Rights website, https://www.ed.gov/OCR. There, a complaint of discrimination can also be filed. https://www.ed.gov/about/offices/list/complaint intro.html. 1. The information in this document under idea applies to public agencies, which include state educational agencies, SEAs, local educational agencies, LEAs, educational service agencies, ESAs, nonprofit public charter schools that are not otherwise included as LEAs or ESAs and are not a school of an LEA or ESA, and any other political subdivisions of the state that are responsible for providing education to children with disabilities. IDEA also requires state lead agencies to provide early intervention services for infants and toddlers. This resource refers to all these entities as public agencies. To the information in this document regarding Section 504 applies to all schools, which includes public schools and school districts, as well as private schools, public charter schools, and magnet schools, and post-secondary institutions that receive federal financial assistance from the department. Although some Section 504 regulatory requirements are different for public and private school recipients, both public and private schools that receive federal financial assistance from the U.S. Department of Education must comply with Section 504. See 34 CFR paragraph 104.33 and 39. Section 504 falls under OCR's jurisdiction. 3. Another federal disability civil rights law, the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, also applies to schools. Title II of the ADA prohibits disability discrimination by public entities, including public schools. Title III of the ADA prohibits disability discrimination by certain private entities, including certain private schools. OCR shares in the enforcement of Title II of the ADA with the U.S. Department of Justice, DOJ. DOJ has enforcement authority for Title III of the ADA. This document focuses on Section 504 and the IDEA. More information about the ADA is available at www.ed.gov/OCR and www.ada.gov. 6. Long COVID under Section 504 and the IDEA for ED COVID-19 Handbook, Strategies for Safely Reopening Elementary and Secondary Schools, Volume 1, available at https://www.ed.gov/documents/coronavirus/reopening.pdf, Volume 2, Roadmap to Reopening Safely and Meeting All Students' Needs, available at https://www.ed.gov/documents/coronavirus/reopening-2.pdf, and Volume 3, Strategies for Safe Operation and Addressing the Impact of COVID-19 on Higher Education Students, Faculty, and Staff, available at https://www.ed.gov/documents/coronavirus/reopening-3.pdf. 5 questions and answers on civil rights and school reopening in the COVID-19 environment, May 2021, available at https://www.ed.gov/about/offices/list/ocar/qa-reopening-202105.pdf. 6. https://bestpracticesclearinghousse.ed.gov/. 7. For purposes of this document, students with disabilities generally refers to the definition of disability found in the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 at 29 U.S.C. paragraph 7059b, 20b. See also the Department's Section 504 regulation at 34 CFR paragraph 104.3j. Child or children with disabilities generally refers to the definitions of child with a disability or infant or toddler with a disability in Parts B and C of the IDEA. See 34 CFR paragraph 300.8, Part B, and 34 CFR paragraph 303.21, Part 100. However, the terms and definitions are not mutually exclusive. All children with disabilities who are eligible for special education and related services under IDEA are protected by Section 504, but the inverse is not true. Not all students protected by Section 504 are IDEA eligible. See U.S. Department of Education, Office for Civil Rights, Parent and Educator Resource Guide to Section 504 in Public Elementary and Secondary Schools, December 2016. Available at https://www.ed.gov/about/offices/list/officer-guide-201612.pdf. 834 CFR paragraph 300.102a. 9. Appropriate early intervention services are available to all infants and toddlers with disabilities in the state and their families, including Indian infants and toddlers with disabilities and their families residing on a reservation geographically located in the state, infants and toddlers with disabilities who are homeless children and their families, and infants and toddlers with disabilities who are wards of the state. 10. The CDC has identified a post-COVID condition called multisystem inflammatory syndrome in children, MISC. MISC is a condition where different parts of a child's body can become inflamed, including the heart, lungs, kidneys, brain, skin, eyes, or gastrointestinal organs. Children with MISC may have a fever and various symptoms, including abdominal, gut pain, vomiting, diarrhea, neck pain, rash, bloodshot eyes, or feeling extra tired. Currently, it is unknown how long multi-organ effects might last and whether the effects could lead to chronic health conditions. MISC, mental health conditions, and future conditions not yet identified as a result of contracting COVID may adversely impact a student's educational performance or other major life activity. And if they do, the same process described in this document applies to those students. 11. CCDC's post-COVID conditions website, https://www.cdc.gov/coronavirus/2019-ncov/long-term-effects.html. 12. CCDC's post-COVID conditions website, https://www.cdc.gov/coronavirus/2019-ncov/long-term-effects.html. 13. For more information concerning long COVID as a disability, see Department of Justice and Department of Health and Human Services guidance on long COVID as a disability under the ADA, Section 504 and Section 1557, https://www.hhs.gov/civil-rights/civil-rights-COVID-19 guidance-long-COVID-disability/index.html. 1434 CFR paragraph 300.301 300.306. 15. IDEA does not require children to be identified with a particular disability category for purposes of the delivery of special education and related services, since a child's entitlement under IDEA is to FAPE and not to a particular disability label. See Assistance to States for the Education of Children with Disabilities and Preschool Grants for Children with Disabilities. Final Rule 71 Fed. Reg. 46,540, 46,737, August 14th, 2006. 1634 CFR paragraph 303.303 303.322. 1729 USC paragraph 7059B 20B. 18. For more examples of major life activities and bodily functions, see the Department's Parent and Educator Resource Guide to Section 504 in Public Elementary and Secondary Schools Resource Guide. Available at https://www.ed.gov/about.
Already gotten that one. Did I save it though?
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention also recognizes other post-COVID conditions, a series of illnesses resulting in debilitating conditions. COVID. This guidance may also be applicable to the post-COVID conditions. For example, 7. Long COVID under Section 504 and the idea 19. In addition, if a person with long COVID has a record of such impairment or is regarded as having such an impairment, the person would meet the definition of disability under Section 504, 2034 CFR paragraph 303.303. 21. In this document, parent refers to both parents and guardians. 2234 CFR paragraph 300. A reevaluation procedure consistent with the idea as one means of meeting this Section 504 requirement. 26. Parentally placed private school children with disabilities may receive special education and related services through a services plan. See 34 CFR paragraph 300.130 27. For more information about identification, evaluation, placement, and other Section 504 procedures, refer to the resource guide available at https://www.ed.gov/about/offices/list/ocr/resource-guide-201612.pdf. 2834 CFR paragraph 104.4, 4147. Post-secondary institutions provide academic adjustments, auxiliary aids, and service. 2099. 30. Under Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act, Title II, which prohibits disability discrimination by public entities, including public schools, OCR has jurisdiction regardless of whether the entity receives federal financial assistance. 8.
It's going to be so important that everybody understand what the rules are. The rules are just simply the rules. Not making up anything. Failure should never be an option, but it's the first option for so many African